Okay, I'd like to call the Ellis County Commission meeting to order, please. Can we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, Bobby, if you could call roll, please.
Commissioner Nathan Liker.
Here.
Chair Neil Younger.
Here.
Commissioner Michael Burgess.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, the order of business, that all stays the same. Prior minutes. Everybody have a chance to look at that?
I'll approve the minutes.
Okay. The consent agenda? Anything there?
I'll approve consent agenda items A through G, or move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Okay, any persons from the audience that are not on the agenda, they would like to speak? Okay. The financial report monthly?
Everything looked in order.
Me too. Okay. Okay, the county appraiser compliance. Lisa?
Morning,
Good
Commissioners.
Morning.
Lisa Ree, County Appraiser. Thought I'd just take a couple minutes this morning to go over with you some communication we've received recently from the State Property Valuation Department regarding our office. The first letter we received was that our office for this past tax year has met all the requirements, and they consider the appraiser's office to be in substantial compliance. There are two parts to that substantial compliance. There is a statistical compliance review that they do, and there's also a procedural compliance review. I've included in the packet, the second page of the information is the statistical ratio study that they do for each county, and this, of course, this is ours. Just to point out a couple things on that, under the property class, we have our residential classification and our commercial industrial classification. These are the two main areas that they look at to see how well our values are compared to the actual sale prices. And these are for the tax year 2022. So anytime there's a property that's sold in the county, they will look at that to determine if it's a arm's length transaction, an actual valid sale, and then they will compare that sale price to our values. And if you'll see on the residential, they looked at 200 of our sales for the residential properties. They consider us a sampling county, so they don't look at every single sale. They randomly select 200 properties, and within those 200, our ratio is at 95.3. They like for us to be with, of course, 100 would be perfect, but they give us a 10% leeway either way. So if we were down at 90, we would be in compliance. If we were 103, we would be in compliance. And that is a median, which is kind of the middle point of all those sales. And that's an industry standard to look at the median. So of course, we have some that we are too high, some we are too low, and others we're spot on or close to it. So this is a good industry standard to see how well our values are compared to the market. This other one then is commercial and industrial, and you can see they only had 31 sales, which for us that's very unusual to have that many commercial sales to be included in this study for a year. That median ratio is at 92. Because of the way the commercial market was and with the cost of commercial properties increasing so much, the state did allow us to apply a trend to our sales. And if we had not been able to do that, then we probably would not have been in compliance. Our values would have been in the 80s ratio for commercial. That's kind of a quick nutshell of how that ratio study works, but are there any quick questions about that?
You said 31 sales on the commercial and industrial was kind of high. What is your average, would you say?
Maybe 15.
Okay.
15 sales. Yeah. Now, we have more sales than that, but they don't look at sales if they haven't been on the open market. Those aren't considered in this type of thing. Or if there's a sale between family members, that's not considered in this study.
Okay. And by being at 95 or 92, that is meaning you are actually undervaluing more or less a little bit.
Yes, on average.
Okay.
Yes. On the residential, on average, our values are about 95% of the actual. They were about 95% of the actual sale prices.
Okay.
This is coming from state, so the state is the one that's assessing, and you have to meet those standards set by the state,
Yes. We have, just about everything that we do, the appraiser's office does, is either required by statute or has guidelines from the state property valuation department. We have maintenance specifications that we follow. We have compliance guidelines that we have to follow, and they're all governed by statutes.
What happens as an appraiser if you undervalue, and you got that 10% leeway one way or the other, and you're kind of, again, you're right in the middle, but if you undervalue for too long, what is the consequence to an appraiser?
If a county continually does not meet these specifications for this ratio study, the state does have the option to come in and step in and take over the county appraiser's office. And then if, our goal is to be as close as we can. So we have consistent, we stay up with the market. If we're not staying up with the market, and like if I would retire or someone else would come in, they could look at that different. And I've seen it in other counties where a new appraiser comes in and those values will jump significantly because that appraiser is going to try to meet these standards. And I know we've had significant value increases the last 2 or 3 years, and that is all due to the way the market is. Houses are selling better, commercial values, those have increased also, and that's all. Commercial is mainly due to cost factor, but the residential is just how the houses are selling.
So I have no intention of selling my house, but so the way you appraise my house, though, 3 houses on my street have essentially sold for almost $100,000 more than what appraisal is. So from your standards as an appraiser going into this year and next year, even though I have no intention to do anything with my house, the process of your appraisal is how the houses on my street are essentially selling, which will raise the value of mine, correct?
Could very well possibly, yes. We have, say, the city of Hayes is all divided up into specific neighborhoods. And you're fortunate, so to speak, to have houses on your street that have sold. That's not always that case, so we have them in neighborhoods. And we will go within that neighborhood and try to find a similar house based on, say, age, square footage, the style, some of the amenities, and we make adjustments for that. And whether you want to sell your property or not, the statutes say the appraiser is to put a fair market value on that property. And by looking at comparables for residential properties, that's what we're doing.
How many comparables do you put like for my home again, how many comparables in a year would you put towards it?
When we're looking at those properties for the whole county, we will use between 600 to 800 sales.
Okay.
Now, that can be narrowed down. We have Hayes broken out into 2 areas, and then we have the rural and all the small towns in another area. So a property, like my property in Shinshin, will not be compared to a house in Hayes.
If somebody wants to protest, I take it you welcome, they'll bring in their own comparables, correct?
That's
Or you
very
ask
helpful.
them to do them?
That's very helpful.
That's what,
Yeah. We send out the real estate valuation notices first part of March. And after that valuation is sent to the property owner, they have 30 days after that date to contact our office and request a hearing. And we use that a lot of times just as an explanation of the process, an explanation of how we came up with the value. And some people, they do their own research and they may have a better property to use as a comparable than what we have selected. And we'll look into that as well. Then also, if they don't take advantage of that opportunity to have a hearing, then when they pay their taxes in December, November, December, they can either do it with their first half, or if they pay in full, they can request a payment of protest form from the treasurer's office. And then we get that information, and then we'll have a hearing with them. And if they don't take advantage of that option, then they have the opportunity to do that payment of protest again when they pay their second half taxes in May. So there are opportunities to have a one-on-one conversation with our office about your property.
With those, if a person goes through the protest and brings in comparables, how often are the values changed or the assessed values changed? Is that a fairly common practice, or is it usually they turn out very close to where you are, it's being as you're at 95%?
I hear from people that it does not do any good to come in and talk to our office, but that's not true. We spend a lot of time individually on each protest that we have, no matter what time of year it is. And if someone brings in other comparables, we will definitely look at those. And just off the top of my head, I'm thinking it's somewhere between 50 and 60% of the protests that are filed, that we have hearings on, that has a change.
As far as other counties comparable to us, are we pretty close in the 95, 92%? I mean, just, I don't know if you talked to other.
I didn't look at the other
Okay.
counties this year. I know it is, a lot of counties struggle to make the statistical requirement for the commercial industrial section, just because there are so few sales. There are some counties, especially out the smaller ones, that don't even have a commercial sale a year.
Okay.
But these numbers, to me, I'm very satisfied with these numbers.
well, thank you for your time again. Numbers look good to me. That's what we want to be, is within a compliance standard that the state sets.
Yes.
So I appreciate you coming in and kind of giving us an update and going through that with us again. Thank you.
And I also included the compliance review sheet in there, just so you have a little idea of how they look at our work, and some of the things that, it probably doesn't mean much to anybody else but to us, but some of the things that we have to do to get to the final value, final stage of setting a market value. It's kind of their grade sheet that they use for a county.
And your score was 100 out of a total of 100.
This year, we did everything we needed to do, and did it timely, and got everything to the state, and met all the statutory requirements.
Good deal. Good job. Your staff and you, and not only that, now our community gets to see it too, and they'll understand it also. It's not just us as Ellis County, it's the state that sets a lot of this. So.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I guess Brendan's out somewhere. He's coming back. Okay. You were trying to get out of it, weren't you?
No,
Okay.
unfortunately. But work carries on sometimes. You have to step
I
out.
understand.
So before you is 48th Street reconstruction using cost share. So since I've been here, we've applied 5 times. Once with the city of Hayes for cost share grants. We've been awarded 3 of those. This last time, unfortunately, we were not awarded the grant. Recommending we apply for it again. And as part of that application, we have a letter of support from the city of Hayes. I've got one from Grow Hayes now, and the city's also going to contribute $200,000 towards what the local match for this project would be. We have $300,000 currently set aside in Fund 78 for the county staff to do an overlay. The best treatment for the road is a reconstruction. It's going to give us the most life out of it and the best value for the dollar. Our repair, doing it ourselves, it would look good for a few years, but unfortunately, we believe those cracks may propagate back through that are currently out there. So with that said, with the funding we have in Fund 78, I'd like to increase the amount putting towards the project for local match. It would lower the amount we would need from the state. There's a minimum of 15% local match required. Everything above that you do gives you more points towards being selected. They weight it based on area, prior awards, what the value is, because the state's looking to do projects that are going to get the best value for the dollar that they're giving out. And with having a joint project like this, we feel it's a better chance of being selected, and if we increase our funding level towards this project, that gives us more points in that selection criteria.
And by changing the amount that you want us to change from our initial overlay estimate, that isn't going to affect us in the long term.
No, it's not going to affect those other projects we have in Fund 78 already.
Okay.
Say that again, your first statement about 5 grants, we got 3.
So we've applied 5 times for this cost share grant since I've been here. We've been awarded 3 times. Twice for Cathedral Avenue, Phase 1 and Phase 2, and then once with the City of Hayes as a joint project for 13th Street. The 4th time we applied was this past spring, so this is actually, this will be the 5th time we've been applying for this grant since I've been here. I've never seen another county get selected back-to-back, let alone back-to-back to effectively back again with a joint project. So I didn't expect to get it in the spring. I still hope for it, but I'm still going to try. But it's very uncommon to see a county get awarded multiple grants each cycle like this. But if no one else is applying for them, it just increases our chance of being selected.
On the successful ones, do we have city support as well?
Yes. So the first grant that we got while I was here was the first phase of Cathedral, which involved the city of Victoria. It included the city limits of Victoria. And then we also received a letter of support from them again for the second phase, because although it didn't include the city limits, they weren't going to be a contributing member to the team on that one. It's a benefit for them because it provides access to their city. And then the third award we got was the city's application that we were a joint applicant on for 13th Street widening, in preparation for the new high school being built there.
What would prospective timeline be on if we go through this process and are awarded the grant? The cracks are very prevalent right now.
There's mastic seal on them. They're getting too big for more mastic at this point. I mean, it's the time frame from if selected for a grant would be, we get selected, we'll know here in a few months generally. Depends on if they want the governor to announce the cost share grant, then it may take up to 6 months before they announce the awardees. And then when it's awarded, we'll receive paperwork saying, the state asking that, making sure that we're going to do this project. Once we submit that paperwork back, they'll give us a notice to proceed, which means we can hire a design engineer and they can start doing design work. So it can take up to a year before new pavement's being laid. Sometimes shorter, sometimes longer, just depending upon the scope of this project. Because there's no railroad bridges, it's a straight shot, nothing complicated. I don't envision design taking a long time. Just depends on if there's a utility that's crossing in the way. Shouldn't be, but
So theoretically, we go through all this, it would be 2025 before we turn shovels. So is the road in its current state going to be acceptable to continue driving until then?
it's bumpy.
It's rough. It's not bumpy, it's rough.
It's low, it keeps the speed lower.
So, okay, well, it's something to, I'm for going ahead and changing it and applying. But as I've said in the past, there's only a fine amount of time that we can push some of this stuff down the road.
And that'll be if we don't get the award, come back before you and
Put it back
get
on.
permission to just overlay it and put a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah.
Get it back up to snuff, more or less.
Best value for us is to do it this, instead of Band-Aiding it together, is to do it right the first time. Sometimes you do have to put Band-Aids on things just because that's all you can do. It's not to the point where I say Band-Aid is absolutely necessary at this point in time. It would help, but we'd be spending good money after going after bad. It would be the best use of our dollars.
Okay.
Yeah, I also support it. I mean, Brandon, you've gotten us through your grants, you've gotten us a lot of millions of dollars in the few years you've been here, and
7.2 up to the beginning of this year, and we've gotten a few since then, so.
I just wish the process would go faster because the community uses that road a lot. That
Yep.
road gets traveled heavy.
And that's part of why the road was, the county forces turned it from, I believe, wasn't here at the time, but according to county staff, it was a dirt road or a dead-end path that stopped before Tractor Supply. In 2001, the county laid that road out the way it is and had a contractor lay down hot mix asphalt. That's why it's 22 years later and nothing has been done besides some crack sealing and things like that. 20 years is about the most you see out of a hot mix overlay before you start needing more repair work. The failures on that road, it's not base failure like the prep work the county did to it. It's more like the asphalt grows and shrinks in weather changes. If you ever rode a bicycle or a motorcycle in a hot summer day, you put your kickstand down on pavement, come back out, 20 minutes later, it's an inch in the ground. These cracks are because pavement didn't expand, didn't contract properly from the looks of it. So they may be wedge shaped, so our thought with our inexpensive fix was to mill out a portion of the road surface, try and keep that from keyholing and propagating through the new surface.
It's like chewing bubble gum too long.
Yep.
In your experience, in the past experience, is there anybody out there that we could mill up those cracks and fill back in without spending a lot of funds? I mean, because 25,
Nothing's impossible.
Okay.
It would still take a lot. Like our cold mix, if we can't lay a cold mix patch in there that thick,
Right.
it will push and rut, and those bumps will
Get worse.
feel worse because you'll now have a bigger jump in there. It could potentially be milled out. We don't have the machines, we would have to rent something
Okay.
and then try and get a hot mix contractor to make some and lay it in there. But
Then again, there's the cost associated with it.
and when you mill that out and you replace that strip, that part is now good.
Then
But like on Ellis Avenue where we milled rock into those patches, you see how it's failing in between those patches now. That's my worry, is if we go down that path, we'll end up spending more money and for a worse product in the end.
Okay. Anything, fellas?
I'm good with going ahead and allowing them
Yeah.
to increase our are in the cost share, seeing as it will not affect future projects, but I'll let the commission know now that if we don't get selected, we need to revisit this
Then we
and
gotta, yeah.
get ahead of it.
Then it just prolongs it another maybe year or 2 years.
Correct.
We're out of our asphalt season anyway,
I know.
so. Anyway, I guess there's no motion that's necessary on this line item, so.
Right. And you had asked a question not last week, but the prior week, Chairman Younger, about what it costs for us to elevate a rock road and reshape it. So the last few road elevation projects has been between $27,500 and $29,500. So just under $30,000 for each mile of roadway that's elevated. Part of it depends on water availability, sources for water nearby, and the availability of material nearby. So the last two major ones, that's what it's broken down to per mile.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Okay, the 2024 budget, revenue neutral rate budget hearing. Darren?
Board of Commissioners, Darren Myers, County Administrator. The next step in discussion of the 2024 budget is brought to you this morning in regards to the public hearing and any final changes made to the budget. Since our last discussion on the budget last month, the only change that was made was the approval you just gave Brendan when we increased the Fund 78. These are capital funds, increasing that fund from $300,000 to $600,000 for that cost share grant. Other than that, nothing else has changed. So with the process to move forward, we have 3 motions in the agenda. Is basically to have the commission open a public hearing for the community to discuss with you their thoughts on the budget. And then after that is done and the public has commented, you can close it. And then if you choose to proceed with the third motion would be to make the motion to exceed the revenue neutral rate and approve the budgets. And I can stand for any questions unless you would like to proceed.
I have no question.
Motion, I move to open the public hearing for the intention of exceeding the revenue neutral rate in 2024 Ellis County budgets.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion approved. Okay, anyone from the,
Am I correct that your motion is, you're covering both the budget and the revenue neutral at the same time? Is that correct?
That is
Okay.
correct.
Sir.
And then mine kind of covers both of them. So I'm Ken Kennedy. I live at 4500 Danby Lane, Hayes, Kansas. I sent you a letter, I thought, in May, but apparently you didn't get it. I sent it to this address, but apparently it didn't happen. And so I talked to Darren, and he did forward my letter of May to you. So you have some of the information I'm going to talk to you about, I believe, already. But I want to talk more in generalities, more than specifics right now. And I realize when I come to you at this time, it's a little late. You've done a lot of work on the budget at this point. It's always late to have a budget hearing on the budget that's basically prepared, and I understand that fully. But by the same token, I think I spoke with you last year, and that was a year in advance, and I probably said about the same thing then. And then sending the letter, and I'll try to be more careful in getting the letter to you next year in time. But in generalities, here's what's happened in our county. The assessed valuations have went up significantly. In the last 2 years, the assessed valuations have went up an average of about 12% a year for the 2 years. Now, there's 2 parts to taxes that we as citizens pay. One, and what determines the taxes. One is the mill levy, and the other is the assessed valuation. Both have a direct impact on taxes. You have no control, basically, over the assessed valuation. As your appraiser just talked to you, that's kind of controlled by several factors, and the state has some input into that. And you have little control of that. And the community wants their assessed valuations to increase. It's better than going the other way. But by the same token, When they do, it directly impacts people's taxes. And then when the mill levy stays flat, as basically our county's mill levy as a whole, talking about the three entities, the school district, the city, and the county, those are the big three taxing entities. There are a few others, but that's the big three. And when their mill levies stay basically flat, the assessed valuations go up 12% last year, 12% this year on average. That increases people's taxes 24%. No question about it. In 2 years, your taxes have went up 24%. They average about 12% a year going up, and that's merely a factor of the assessed valuation. What can you all do about that? What you can do about it is lower the mill levy slightly. Now, I don't pretend to believe that you can lower the mill levy to the revenue neutral rate. That is just too big a step. I mean, it would be nice, I suppose, but then that would create a problem for your funding because you've got increased costs too. But you can lower your mill levy slightly to put some of that excess revenue that you're getting as a result of assessed valuation increases back into the pockets of taxpayers and business owners, which is really helpful. So I think each of you look at your tax statements. Some of you own businesses, I'm sure. Your appraisals are at, your assessments are at 25%, I believe, of appraisal, and houses are 11.5% of appraisals. But if you look at your tax statements, as most citizens will when they come out next month, or I guess probably in December, when they come out in December, they're going to see another increase of about 10% on their taxes overall. So if you look at the bond issue, which raised our taxes 10%. You look at 12% assessed valuation increase last year, 12% this year on average. We're talking about a 30% tax increase in 2 years. 30% is huge. It's just huge. You just can't imagine what that does to both taxpayers and to business owners. And the only way to mitigate that is to reduce the mill levy. As I said earlier, you have no control of the assessed valuation. You can reduce the mill levy slightly. Now again, to take it clear back, drop it in 2 years, to drop the mill levy 30% wouldn't be unreasonable. The bond issue is baked in, and you have no control of that. I have none of us. The citizens voted for it. I voted for it. It's in the budget and will be there for the next years. But the part that we do have some control of now is the mill levies locally each year. And so I'm asking you to consider, and if not this year, certainly next year, look at ways to control the mill levy. Now, you did reduce it slightly, about a half a mil this year compared to last year, which is somewhat helpful, and I appreciate that. My specific request to the three entities was to reduce the mill levy 2 mills each. If each major taxing entity in the county, being the city, the school district, and the city, the county school district and city, if each of them would have reduced the mill levy by 2 mills, that would have offset the tax increase this year by about half of what it's going to be. So instead of people getting a 10 to 12% tax increase on their taxes coming out in December, they would have got about a 6%, which is reasonable, but 12 is not. So you can't do it alone. It would take the commitment of the school district and the commitment of the county. And I'll tell you, I shared with the school district last night the same concern, and I'll be sharing with the city. I've already talked to the city previously, but I'll be talking with them again, just to mention this. And if not this year, I ask you to look forward to next year and say, hey, how can we reduce this impact on our community and share some of the tax increases back with the community members? Instead of such an enormous tax increase, maybe we can mitigate that a bit by reducing your mill levy slightly. It used to be when the assessed valuation stayed about steady, grew about 2 or 3% a year, 4% a year, setting the mill levy flat, which your mill levy's been basically flat for a number of years, or pretty close to flat, made some sense. It was the right thing to do. You saw a little appraised value increase and your mill levy stayed flat, you saw a little increase in your budget. But when the assessed valuation went up so significantly in 2 years, then it's increased taxes tremendously. And you've all seen it. I'm sure you've seen it on your tax bills. So anyway, that's the purpose of me presenting today, is to ask that you consider reducing your mill levy. And if not this year, certainly start thinking about it for next year and look at the ways to reduce it next year. Now, I also want to say that it's very important in my mind to fairly compensate your employees, no question about it. They have increased costs just like all of us do, and their wages need to be adjusted to make up for that. You have other commitments. Roads is one of your big ones, and those can cost a lot more today than they did yesterday. But again, 30% tax increase in our community is huge. And it doesn't impact just homeowners and businesses, but it impacts people who rent. Because I think if you checked, I imagine most landlords have had to increase their rent to offset the tax increase on their properties. They've had no choice. So it does impact renters as well. So we're all impacted by tax increases. So I do ask that you review your budgets, look at places, and the point is, in government, you'll never have enough money. You just never will. There's not such a thing as enough money in government to take care of every need that exists. You will never have enough money to take care of every road like you want to in this county. You'll never have enough money to take care of the other responsibilities you have. No government does. But you also have a responsibility to taxpayers to do what you can to mitigate their tax increases and still make reasonable provisions to provide for the needs of the community. And I want to compliment you. I did last year and I will again this year. I think Ellis County does a great job. I think your roads, compared to many other counties, are very well kept. I think your facilities are very well kept. I mean, you do a nice job, but that costs money, I understand. But look at your budget and say, where can we possibly reduce some expenditures that doesn't negatively impact our community and our county and yet save the taxpayers some dollars? That's all I'm asking. And I want to thank Darren and Bobby. Bobby's met with me a couple of times, talked about tax. She's always very helpful. Darren spends a lot of time talking with me about tax increases. And so that's my specific request in closing would be, look at ways to reduce your mill levy this year and next year, if at all possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Nope.
Somewhere else, I'd like to make a little bit of a comment.
Okay.
One, Aaron, we did lower the mill by half. We expect to maybe be able to lower another mill yet before the end of the year with a tax, not abatement, I think, right?
Correct. The current mill levy is 37.575. With the preliminary stage forms we filled out that will be submitted, it's down to 37.045, so roughly just over a half a mil. Those final evaluations, when they come in from the state on the November abstract, when Bobby does the final in November, that will fluctuate a little bit. As part of that state assessed utility, the state assesses the utilities and their taxes. That's not done here locally. What we found out is the transmission line that runs from the southwest part of the county up to sort of the northeast, the ITC transmission line, that had a 10-year tax abatement. There's two phases. And phase 1 and phase 2 basically ended in Ellis County at the Goodman Energy Center just northwest of Hayes. The tax abatement for the first phase comes off this year. The tax abatement for the second phase from Hayes to Nebraska comes off next year. With that tax abatement coming off, they didn't get the changes made on the assessed valuations that we received to fill out the budget as it is today. If it were to be included, it's roughly equal to 1 mil in valuation. So once that, we are anticipating. However, I didn't want to plan for it in case something did go wrong, or it's up to the state. When we get those final valuations, our mill levy should drop from 37 down to 36. So essentially, we should be looking at a mill and a half, just over a mill and a half decrease if that state assessed valuation, that tax abatement does come off. And then next year we can use that as well to help offset some more of the mill levy as that second abatement comes off next year. And hopefully we'll get that before this time next year, so that way it'll be included in our initial state assessed valuation total.
And I think, as Mr. Kennedy pointed out, when we went through our budget process and we got a little, I think that's been in our mind is to, for next year's budget, is to certainly continue that process of trying to find ways to lower that mill again. So I appreciate him speaking well and sending a letter. I'm going to point out a few other things that could help us and those that are involved and want to, advocate for your local communities and get state involved. Again, as a county, we're very reliant on what the state and state statutes do. So if you're not aware, and I'm just going to make a little public comment, and this isn't to debate Mr. Kennedy because he's right, but the counties could use a lot of help. The local ad valorem tax, which lovingly called the LAVTR, is funding that directly applies to lowering our tax levies. It's funding that we send to the state and they collect. And this goes back to the history of counties. If the appraisals, you maintained your mill, if appraisals didn't go up very much, you could kind of maintain that mill without lowering it. But from 1937 up to 2003, the state sent back this local ad valorem tax to help offset the mill levy. And this year's number that Ellis County should have gotten back from the state was $1.2 million that they held. $1.2 million is 2 mills right there. On top of that, there's a special city-county revenue sharing, which is again it's a sales tax on cigarette and liquor taxes that started in 1978. The state collected that from all the county sales and would then get it back to the counties. They stopped sending that money back to the counties, which for this year was $600,000 for Ellis County. So there's another mill on the special city-county revenue sharing. There's also the special city-county highway fund, which again is motor vehicle collections that the state gets that is supposed to come back to the counties. There's also casino revenues that's going back a few years when they started putting the approval for state casinos. Some of their revenue was supposed to come back to offset property taxes, and this year that would have been almost $500,000 between those. So there's another mill. There's 4 mills right there that the state is collecting essentially in their coffers. By statute are supposed to send back, and they're not. I will go a step farther and advocate for Medicaid expansion. Some may go, well, how the hell would that help the county? We fund 2 organizations, Development Service Northwest Kansas and High Plains Mental Health. The reason we've helped fund them is because they're not fully funded, again, by the state, by what the state's supposed to fund them. So that gap between what the state funds and that they need to run their organizations, they come to the county. They come to 18 counties for DSNWK and 20 counties for High Plains Mental Health. And the counties help fund that gap. With Medicaid expansion, you take those federal dollars, then the state can fully fund those organizations. And Ellis County, again, funds those 2 organizations $500,000. There's a mill right there. So there's 5 mills that almost overnight, if the state followed with their statutes funding, and they keep bragging about this $3 billion surplus that they're holding, but that $3 billion surplus is essentially coming from these tax revenues that they're supposed to send back to their cities and counties. There's various reasons. There's political reasons. There's other reasons why they haven't or and won't probably. But that would be part of our advocacy is to continue to work with our state legislators to see about, if we're serious about trying to help lower our property, the mills. Again, valuations are up because sales are up, and there's goods to that. But if the state legislation is also serious about looking at property taxes and the mill levy, these are some of the programs that we got to continue to pressure to help our cities and counties get the funding that I think that we deserve. So those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. That on the 6th of September, Brandon and I were in Oakley, and that definitely did get brought up to some of the legislators, and so we're working at it. Just not Ellis County, all counties. It's a big deal. Like you said, there's a lot of money that was generated that the counties didn't get back, which hurts all of us. So.
And they don't have to raise it. These are taxes that we're already sending because they've been taxed. We're sending to the state, so it's not the state having to raise our taxes elsewhere. or assess anything else. It's already our money that we're sending, that we're essentially not getting it back in return.
Nate, anything?
I have no other comment. I mean, I guess my comment would be that we're very, the three of us and all the department heads and Darren were very concerned when we went through the budget, and I feel we did a good job, and we're trying to put the money where it's going to be the most visible, and make it the best use or spent dollars this year. I mean, we're going to spend money. I mean, that's what government does, is spend money, but we're going to be putting it to where people can see it and feel it, and I think that'll be huge for a number of different reasons.
Yep, I will definitely second on that, because we did spend a lot of time and fine-tooth combed it. We really did, and yeah, I know we'll never catch up with our roads, but we do need good roads coming into our community to bring people in, and like I say, 24 we'll work at it harder and really go through it. So.
If there's any other public comments, and I will move to close the public hearing for 2024 revenue neutral rates and budgets.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion approved. Okay. I need one more motion yet.
Well, with that, I'll move to exceed the revenue neutral rate and approve the proposed budgets in Resolution 2320 for the budget year 2024.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion approved.
Just a quick correction on that one. The roll call vote
Okay,
by Bobby.
sorry. Sure, if you would, please.
Do a roll call for the revenue neutral rate hearing. Nathan Liker, how do you vote?
Aye.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Chair Neil Younger,
Yes.
Commissioner Michael Burgess.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Historical Society funding, Amanda?
Just come here and learn so much, and then you always bring me up here after all the important stuff. And I'm like, wow. Amanda Rupp, Ellis County Historical Society, coming today, sent a letter to Darren about some special funding that's been provided to the Historical Society in the past, and requesting a disbursement of that. Did Darren I thought you said you wanted to
Yeah, I
discuss
can
something
just do
about
it.
it, or?
In the agenda item, it just briefly explains where that money comes from. Each year, we get money from drinking establishments, bars, restaurants, and stuff for the liquor tax. That money is then distributed back, part of that money is distributed back to Ellis County, and by statute, since we're talking about statutes so much today, it is to be equally divided in thirds into 3 different funds. A third of the funds go to the general fund, and we budgeted for that. It's $5,089. The next $5,089 we have set aside in the special alcohol fund, and the third is to the special parks and recreation fund. The alcohol fund, that usually gets requested through United Way once a year, and then they give a recommendation, and I believe in the past those get split out between Smoky Hill Foundation. I can't remember the other one right away. But they usually give the commission the recommendation as to where it goes. The Special Parks and Recreation Fund, that third $5,089, is usually sent to the Historical Society, since the county doesn't own or operate or maintain or have any parks. So with that, we just ask that the Historical Society and United Way each year come before the commission, send a letter of support, or a letter requesting that those funds are dispersed, and that's why we're here this morning.
So, thanks, Darren. When I got the job, they had talked to me about that funding, and I didn't know much about it, so I appreciate you explaining that. I also wanted to just go over our annual update, or not our annual update, our bi-monthly update. that we have been doing really good, and we're still going at it. So we had over 500 visitors this summer through our downtown new building. We had that traveling exhibit from Salina Museum come in, and by able to utilize Next Generation Roundup for Youth interns, we had 2 of them, we were able to expand our hours, and that helped get more people in, or we were able to see more people through the door. However, we're going to go into our off-season because trying to save our money there, and we don't get as many visitors, obviously. So our new hours will be Monday through Thursday, 10 to 4, and open on the weekends by appointment. We get some calls from people that are coming from out of state or something, and we are ready to assist them in any way. Our next showcase for our basement area, display area, will be a display panels coming from the Bulgarian Cultural Center on Germans from Russia. I can't pronounce her last name. It's research by Dr. Olga Lichtenberger. It's called Insights into Religion and Life in German Russians, and it'll be here through the December 6th. As part of our funding and building process, I know everybody wants to know updates on those. You've probably seen we've dug a big hole in the backside of the building now, or pulled out some of that dirt. We are going forward with the ADA parking and entrance there, so people can access our lower entrance, or our lower floor, excuse me. And we are on schedule. We've finished that bathroom. We have ordered the first phase of our HVAC system, and they'll be installing a lot of the pipe work here this fall. And we are on schedule to kind of unveil our final phase of our capital project in January at our annual meeting. So just to highlight some of those wonderful capital funding sources, of course, we got a $350,000 grant from the Schmidt Foundation this summer. Of course, the $84,000 from the Heritage Trust Fund grant. Private donations since January are about $85,000. And part of that was, I just like to give a shout out that a gentleman, Daryl Seibel, stepped up and asked us to make a matching campaign with him. And so that got a lot of, that brought in $50,000 in just like 6 weeks. So our community is there, and we feel it. So the satellite Victoria site is still on, in our sites. It's on hold at the moment for insurance purposes. They almost have all of their ducks in a line and ready to go. As soon as they are, we have $100,000 set aside to start on our phase 1 of that project, which is a very simple storage unit. So we're waiting to do that. Let's see. We have done a lot with community volunteers. We're continuing our monthly volunteer night once a month, and we have started processing all those Hayes Daily negatives that we received when the building sold over there at the Hayes Daily News. So we've got a lot of irons in the pot as usual, and I think we're doing really well. One thing that is new is in 2026, it will be the 150th anniversary of the Volga Germans settling in our county, and we are going to spearhead a celebration committee or an action committee to make that a big celebration in our area. So we will be hosting the first planning meeting on that October 16th at 7 p.m. So any community leader or anyone that has great interest in their past or wants to put on a good party, please come and give us your ideas. We will also be hosting 3 Humanities Kansas speakers this coming fall. One this week on Thursday for Kansas music history, one on railroads, and another one on evolution of language in Kansas. So we hope those bring in some participants. And of course, we are still working on our fundraising, our general operations fundraising. Our big next fundraiser is Spitzbuben sales, and we have lined up to double our 77 dozen from last year to 140 dozen. We got some bakers going at it to sell those again at Oktoberfest, and our trivia night will be back on next year. So those individual fundraising efforts are still in full swing, and I don't know how we're doing it, but we got a great crew. So, and then finally, something that I think is wonderful that the Historical Society had provided from the county, or provided to area citizens and youth, was a Pioneer Day they had put on for 20 years, and it had fallen between the cracks, I think, in maybe 2019, 2018, something like that. We have plans to bring that back this year, so hopefully we'll see about 200 students on our grounds in May as a field day for about third graders, I think. So, and I would like to end with hoping to ask the county for a letter of support. We are trying to round up the final last funds for our Phase 2, and we are applying for a Dane G. Hansen grant for those remaining funds. So I would ask your consideration to have a letter of support.
I have no problem doing it.
Yeah. That sounds good. That sounds like you've been busy.
Has your staff grown? I mean, as far as on your newsletter, I see there's a lot of people involved, so.
We've got, like I said, a good board that pitches in. We were, with the increase from the city and the county last year, we were able to go up from our 2 part-time people to now 4 part-time people. I'm still generally about 30 hours, just under full-time, and the other ones are, 10 to 12 hours and a 20-hour administrative assistant. So we get done what we need to. If not, we've got some volunteer hours that are definitely being used. I don't have the totals for that, but I will by the end of the year because it's a massive amount. So.
That's great that there's volunteers coming there and helping. That makes our community. It really does.
We also took our Hayes Daily News negative project, and I'd like to do this more with other projects, is get the nursing homes or the assisted living programs out there. We took some of this project to them where they can help us process some of these negatives. People used to come down, and retirees, and clip out newspaper clippings and glue them on a piece of paper, and we'd file them away, their stories. Just a lot of intricate little tasks that need to be done, and you can do this while chatting about the old days, and so we did that for a couple of months, once a week in the summer, where we took it to Homestead and Via Christi and got some of their residents involved. So
Good for you.
Back to the first thing, I move to approve the special article funds to be made to Ellis County Historical Society.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved.
Thank you,
Amanda,
ma'am.
thank you. Okay, North County Road traffic complaints, Scott?
Good morning, Commissioners. Scott Brown, Ellis County Sheriff.
Morning.
Well, you'll be stuck with me for the next 45 minutes. I'm just kidding. No, you won't. It won't be that long. So the reason this is on the agenda is I had correspondence with Commissioner Neal wanting me to write up a report in regards to what action we had taken, et cetera. Since I had to be here today, I thought maybe it would be better just to do it in person. As you guys are aware, based upon what was submitted, there were some complaints about some silage cutters being overweight, running the roads at high speeds north, and tearing up the roads. That's essentially what it was. I first received that from our Road and Bridge administrator. We immediately sent guys out multiple times, finding that there was a truck that ran a stop sign. They were made contact with. Appropriate action was taken. Speeds were checked multiple times throughout the week, and every time we received another additional complaint, we increased the number of guys out there. The trucks were running one way from the silage cut location to a destination within Ellis County. They were dumping and they were running another road back to the silage, so they were never running the same road. So we split it up and made sure. The average speed loaded was 50. The unloaded speed was about 55. The fastest one we saw was 61 mile an hour. That is nothing that we typically would cite for. speedometers off, whatever it might be. The complaint was that they were speeding. Now, there are those people out there that can judge speed pretty well, but typically when you have large trucks, people believe that they're speeding. It's just the size of the truck, and it's running down a very narrow road, and a county road, and they typically look like they're speeding. But as you can see, based upon that, my guys had found that there were none speeding over the speed limit. The stop sign, as I said, was addressed. The overweight thing, we are not certified to do that, the sheriff's office, and we have no intention because it's a lot of expense. You literally have to assign someone to do it almost full-time. It's time-consuming. That is the area of the Highway Patrol. They are experts in traffic, and so they were contacted, not only by myself, but also by the Road and Bridge Administrator, Brendan. And they had correspondence. My staff also had correspondence. During the time that my staff was out there, my staff didn't, but they were weighing a truck. It was reported that there were 6,000 pounds over. As of yesterday, I was contacted by the Highway Patrol, who advised that they did have a couple of trucks overweight. They addressed those issues with them and moved on. They also did full truck inspections on some of those trucks. So action was taken, and I understand that chalk roads, as we all know, they get really dusty and they get tore up because we haven't had any rain. If we'd had rain, probably wouldn't have been torn up unless it was excessive amount. And I don't mean to get into roads, that's not my area. But we took action, the Highway Patrol took action. This was a company that was hired by farmers and business within to do a job. And I just want to let the commissioners know that we did what we could and answer any questions you might have.
About how many complaints did you receive?
We only received 2.
One being our staff?
Actually 2 from citizens and 1 from staff, so 3 total. And I didn't actually receive that directly. One of my deputies did, and he explained to him. A farmer from the western part of the county had made comment and was going to call me, and ran into him, and he said, "We're already looking into it. That's why I'm out here. We're trying to get this resolved and make sure that they're following the rules." So I didn't receive an overabundance. I can't speak for anyone else within this room. I don't know how many Brendan received, and I don't know how many the Highway Patrol received. But I can tell you that they were out there on 3 different occasions, is what I understand. The Highway Patrol was trying to find out whether they're actually overweight and taking care of that issue. So,
Thank you.
okay.
Michael, anything?
I don't really have any comments. I don't
mean,
know if...
Our staff done what they were supposed to do. We went out and made sure it was right.
And
Like you said, the roads, no rain, them trucks make it look like they're really going fast with all the white or brown dirt, whatever it may be, whichever road they're on. So
yeah, okay.
that's our job. When they get tore up, we have to fix them back up.
And anytime we receive complaints, we follow up with them. Absolutely. We know high speeds cause accidents and kill people, and I don't know if you guys are aware, but rural accidents overall across the state of Kansas are up from lack of seatbelts, et cetera. So we definitely try to make sure that we're out on the county roads, and you guys see us a lot if you run roads. And so we try to do our best, but we can't be everywhere, but we will follow up always with complaints.
When this is part of normal agriculture activity in our county.
It is. It happens every year about the same time.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
You need to ask for
Any public comments? Anybody want to speak?
If I would, please. Thanks, Scott. You bet. I'm Pat Coon. We were part of the harvesting silage that went to the feed yard. This stuff, it's just tough. It's a failed crop that we find somebody to take it for what it's worth. I know that the conditions are bad. The drought is what brought part of this on, but I have more to say than that. Freeze Trucking is a professional harvesting trucking outfit, and they do a good job. It's on my thought process that this is a way that the farmer can get something left out of that crop, and we look for ways to do it professionally and with least damage as possible. This has went on for 4 years. There's a half-mile stretch between Catherine Road and Old 40 that the Sheriff's Department has set there every year. I don't think they've ever wrote a violation in that half mile. Freeze trucking and harvesting, they're a little bit, they don't have to come back. We all understand, we all have jobs to do. They do it very professionally. If they have to up their rates, because of some of the, let's call it incidentals, they pass that on to the feed yard, and the feed yard takes that back from the farmer. So there is other ways of compensating these, if it's, let's call it, bad enough losses. And also that company leaves a lot of money in this town. They lodge here, they feed here 3 meals a day, the fuel, the tires repair, and I just talked to them yesterday, is all bought locally. So I guess in my defense, the farmer, it's a tough deal, tough decision. A little voice for the harvesting and trucking outfit that they're doing the best possible. They know what they're up against. And so I would leave this with, does anybody have any questions about this?
I just have a comment, Pat, that the input for farmers is ridiculously high.
Scott did a good job.
You said that with a big mouthful because you got to get what you can out of that, and you're still taking a loss.
We don't take this lightly. And I understand
your
the
job.
complaints.
It's part
Yeah,
of your-
it is. And I acknowledge that, Neil, and it's,
I totally understand
All
that,
right.
and like I say, it is what it is. We've got, if the roads get bad, we got to fix them. That's all it's to it.
getting some of the other people in the county to understand that from a remove factor, that this has to be done, and we try and do it as well as possible.
Understand?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, since you're up there,
All right. Commissioners, I'm before you today for the approval of purchase of handguns. So I apologize for the lengthy both descriptions, but I want you to know as well as the public to know what we're doing and why we're doing it. So obviously, we have Glocks right now. That's what we carry. They're 17s. What we're proposing is an aim point system, and in doing so, as we research things, in order to modify our guns, it would be cost more to do that than to purchase new guns with the right platform. We're proposing a 23 Glock 47, 23 Glocks 47, which is the model number. And the reason we're proposing that is, one, we've had our guns for about 6 years. They're very well maintained. But with our trade, we've actually only cost us $115 to carry these guns for 6 years by the time we do our trade. So with that, we're coming out okay in regards to return. And so the expense comes with the aim point, and then secondly, we have what we call night sights on our guns, and they glow. And so we'd have to remove those off the front of our gun because they would they would cause focus to maybe hit our night sights from our guys, and so that is just a blacked out sight. So we'd have to remove those, and those would be, to replace those would probably be $50 to $60 in addition. And the fact that we're at 6 years, and we typically replace our guns in the past between 7 and 8 years. So we're pretty close to that end of life anyway. And as you probably read, what this will allow us, and unfortunately, for us, we are trying to keep up with what the general public has, or the people that we deal with. The sight is a much more accurate, the aim point is a much more accurate, acquisition is much quicker, in regards to getting on site. Therefore, it decreases our probability of misfires if we were involved in a shooting. And it allows our guys to allow both eyes open, and everybody in here has probably shot before. So you close an eye. There are those that can keep both eyes open. It's far in between. But with the aim point, you use both of them, which allows your peripheral vision, and therefore it makes a safer environment for all of us. So we're proposing the replacement of the current Glocks we have, and as you've probably noticed, we are not trading as many Glocks in. We're holding some back because we have them in the jail assigned to, but that staff is not necessarily going to get the aim point because they're assigned to the jail. So we will hold those back for backup weapons, et cetera. And then secondly, one of the additional Glocks at the 23 is because, as we're all aware, we are bringing on our communications person as a detective. Well, you will find out, I guess. And we're bringing him on, so we're going to need to provide him a weapon also, and we will provide him the exact same. So with that said, I'm asking you to consider the purchase of 23 .47 handguns along with the aim points for the sheriff's office. We already bought the holsters through out of our general budget, so we've already got those in line for purchase, and we can absorb those, and so I'm asking for this to be taken out of the special fund, the sheriff's donation fund, if you see so fit.
Thank you for answering the question on how long they last.
Okay.
That was going to be the question I asked.
I wrote that down also. And that 7 to 8 year replacement, just ballpark, what kind of rounds are going through them?
Well, we shoot a lot. So we try to shoot at least once a month or use a force of type of thing. And depending upon what we're doing, they probably get 1,000 rounds through each one of them within a year's time or so. Some guys, and then that doesn't include those guys that go out and like to shoot a little bit more, and so they actually put more through. So we're running quite a few through. Now, with that said, we take very good care of them. We have people that are Glock armors, and we go through them once a year to make sure everything is met. So they're in good working order. It's just technology advances, and so we try to keep the best thing that we can in our guys' hands, the best equipment. And you commissioners have granted that thus far, and previous commissioners about the importance of that. So.
Quite the jump from the old revolvers, huh?
Well, you know, I didn't really have them. I'm not that old.
Michael, anything?
No, again, just, you mentioned it, but for the public's awareness, this is funding from in a state gift that was specified to do what the sheriff kind of deemed as important to your department.
Mr. Samples was the one, and so, yeah, and I think he would find that this is a good use of it, and it doesn't cost the taxpayers anything, and we can use money now to do other things that we want to do, so.
I also would like to thank Mr. Jack Samples for that.
Well, I'll approve the purchase of handguns. Move to approve the purchase of handguns.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion approved.
Are we ready? Okay.
We're ready.
In regards to the approval of a purchase of rifles, so there is a lot of stuff going on in this one. So I hope I can answer your guys' questions. Well, I can. So there's a couple of things going on. So our rifles that we currently have are 20 years old. Again, maintained very well. We would probably entertain, as you can see, we're wanting suppressors put on there. There's a couple of reasons for that. If we go into a building, it will decrease the probability of, if we are involved in a shooting, decrease the probability of damage to officers' ears in those settings. And as we know, excuse me, with incidents occurring within buildings and mass shootings, we've got to protect our guys also. And then at the range also, although we wear ear protection, it's just an added plus. That's one of them. The main reason we need to get rid of those is the age of it, and also in addition to that, is we're unable to put that muzzle or that suppressor on our current ones. So what we'd have to do is we'd have to replace the whole upper, and by the time we do that, we've pretty much got a new gun, other than the lower, for those that are familiar with guns. And in doing so, it would also extend, if we could, it would extend our rifle longer than we would like it because of that barrel design. So in doing so, my guys were tasked with shooting a variety of suppressors, and which I did also, which we tried 13 of them, and we came back to the one that is presented in this here, in the suggested motion language, which is Huxworks. We had a couple of different rifles. We had it's called Black Rain, where I sent my guys to Missouri and spent the day going through their factory, as well as having an opportunity to shoot a variety of weapons, rifles. The 223 or 5.56 is what it was, with suppressors to make sure it would meet our needs. And then we also had Sig Sauer come out, where we shot their platform. The guys, after evaluating them, decided that they really liked the Black Rain rifle a lot better, which is really close to our current platform. It met all of our specs and all of our needs that we wanted. In addition to that, we're also, just like the other one, like the Glock, we're going to put red dots on top of it for that quick acquisition also. And in doing so, that I added that into this discussion also. And in our Streamlight, obviously we need flashlights on our rifles, because you can't hold a rifle and hold one in your hand, and so we would implement that into this purchase also. The only one that is going to be on the purchase order, if approved, would be the rifles. The others, we would just use our purchase cards through and then bill it back to this particular fund. Obviously, again, our 20-year rifles we take care of, but unfortunately for us, we can't adapt our suppressors to them, and that's our main goal, is to get the suppressors, upgrade our equipment. And in addition to that, right now we have 4 different platforms within our patrol cars. It is important, we're trying to get everybody on that same platform, because sometimes we wreck cars and we have to borrow cars, or they're in the shop, that if anybody climbs in any one of our patrol cars, every rifle is set up the exact same. So there is no thought process of, oh, this is the Colt and I've got to do this, or this is another, and a trigger or a release is different in a different location. So I'm asking you to approve the purchase of the 19 rifles. We are trading in our old rifles. They will give that to us, and if you've looked really close, and I'm sure you have, you will see that we are looking to get rid of some shotguns also. We're going to trade those in, which means that I may or may not be back in front of you in regards to replacement. We will replace those, but we have an agency that has some Remington shotguns that are looking to get rid of them. They're no longer going to carry them within their vehicles. I've got my armors looking at those to see, and we can buy those for a reasonable amount. We may have to buy a few new ones, but we're wanting to run the same shotguns also. We had a variety of them. We had Benelli's in there. They're very, very awkward. They're a good gun. They're very heavy. So when staff does a speed load and stuff like that, if you're not fairly strong, you literally can't hold it down and flip it over and throw it. It's very, very heavy. I can tell you that I think it's heavy. So we're trying to go with the same platform, that Remington shotgun or a Mossberg. They're very comparable in it, and the guys really like them a lot better. That's why that's in there for trade with them. We'll offset that. I know that I have the money in capital, and/or we can take it out of this if should the additional shotguns down the road, but not here to address that today, but I wanted to give you a heads up on that. So I guess I would ask if you guys have any questions.
I think you addressed them all. Thank you, Scott.
Michael, anything?
No, when somebody's a half second behind a dove or something, I say, you're shooting at Benelli, aren't you?
Those are semi-automatics. These are pumps.
As far as putting the suppressors on there, I mean, I'm all for it. How many situations have we got into where we have went in with,
We go into homes with them.
okay,
So our guys' go-to weapon when we go in, and they grab their rifles. Occasionally, as you probably are aware, maybe you're not, we carry the shotgun. The main reason we use that is to breach a door. We carry slugs. But the primary reason, the real reason we carry them is because we carry less lethal. We carry beanbag rounds. So if we were to show up on a scene, someone would grab a rifle and somebody would grab a beanbag round. Unless it's an active shooter situation, they'd probably both grab rifles, higher capacity rounds versus the shotgun. So we use them all, but yeah, we do use them. And the majority, I'm going to say, you're going to see a trend of law enforcement going with suppressors across the nation. Multiple, in fact, Hayes PD is also transitioning to suppressors also. We did our testing together, a lot of them, so.
a couple other things just to comment. I like that you're gonna standardize so one guy guy or gal gets in, they can do it. I would, sometime when you have a little time, look and see what, with putting a suppressor on there, what the decibels are as far as on the, unless you have that.
I don't have it, but he told us, and I wish Sergeant Brenning would be here, because he probably could tell you, because he was the one that led this trip. But I'll get it to you.
Text it to me or email it
Yeah,
to all of
absolutely.
us. It'd be,
Yeah.
I bet it's a lot.
Yeah, it is, because I shot him without ear protection just to see, and it was really not loud at all behind that rifle, and a little louder than a .22, but not much. You got a lot big caliber, larger caliber too, so, yeah, very impressed with him. We did our due diligence. We wanted to make sure we picked the right ones that would last a long time.
Will the suppressors, do they have a shelf life more or less?
The ones we're going through are a pass-through, so there's different designs, and I'm not an expert in them. But what it does is it allows that gas to escape right away versus being pushed out the barrel. It's the easiest way. And so these here, you could put a lot of rounds through. I know I will be retired by the time anybody ever has to address those. But you probably 10, 15 years, if not longer. So
Now that's my question, because
Yeah.
we're trading in 20-year-old rifles, so.
Correct.
You know, will we get the same kind of life expectancy out of them?
Yeah. So they're easy to clean, but they have told us you just don't have to clean them a whole lot, because you're not holding all that pressure back, pushing it through, and it comes out through the ports before, and it makes a difference. It's also easier on our guns.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. I'll move to approve the purchase of rifles.
Second. Read that whole paragraph? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved.
Thank you, Commissioners. Have a good day. All
Thank you
right.
for all the information, Scott.
You bet.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay, fire engine purchasing, Darren?
Good morning again, Commissioners. Before you this morning is just a discussion on how you'd like us to proceed with a somewhat, I guess, of a repair and a replacement of a fire truck. As the Commission is aware, I've let each of you know that during the annual pump tests of the engine over in 40, the pump had a catastrophic failure, and we've done research to try to find a new pump. It's a high pressure, somewhat rare to replace it. It's attached to an auxiliary motor on the truck. So we tried to look at a low pressure normal pump or a different pump that would be cheaper to replace to get us in the meantime. Our staff, just due to the timing, our staff has actually been working on the specs on that replacement truck that is actually budgeted to be replaced or brought to the Commission to be replaced in January, so only a few months out. That repair of that truck is $33,000, I guess, is what I was trying to think of, to get that pump back in place. It has to come from Austria because of the age of the pump and the size of the bell housing that it has to mount up to. It's a little bit different than pumps today are designed. The new engine 50 that we replaced a year ago in Hayes, it doesn't have that auxiliary motor for many reasons. The main is emissions standards in today's world, and it's all driven by a PTO shaft. So we've already ordered that pump because as an emergency purchase, we didn't want to have to wait. We tried to wait as long as we could to see if we had an alternative solution. The other downside to changing the pump that was in there is we would spend a significant amount of time afterwards modifying the manifolds, all the pipes, the intakes, everything within the internal structure of the truck. So we'd have a lot more time and labor doing it that way. So once this came up, we started discussing with staff on the fire department, and the next actual truck to be replaced is the engine 60. It's over in Ellis. The trucks are almost identically the same. They got the same exact pump in them. They're 2 years old. The one in Ellis is actually 2 years older. And we had a similar type issue with this pump about 3 or 4 years ago, not to this catastrophic failure event where it actually chewed into the casing, but the water quality over in Ellis is a lot different, and it actually ate and corroded the casing up, and it had leaks where we couldn't weld or fix it, and then the seals in it as well. So once we started talking about this, started looking at some numbers and just looking at what would be in the best financial position for the county, is if we replaced engine 40 would be in January. The time before we would be able to replace engine 60 over in Ellis would be 2 years after that, just being able to, with the thought process of paying cash for those trucks and not having to borrow money. The estimated time to get those trucks are about 2 years for the manufacturer that of the current trucks. Others are up to 36 to 48 months, 3 or 4 years before, or from the time you purchase it to actually having it built and delivered. So we're several years out. So engine 60, if we waited 2 more years to order it, it could be 2 more years after that before we'd actually get it. And now we're putting a truck, which usually a service life on a fire engine is recommended about 20 to 25 years, depending on use and how well it's maintained. So the thought process is, if we're ordering the truck for Ellis or for Victoria, or bringing forth that proposal to the commission to order that in January, should we also consider just ordering the same truck for Ellis and get the Ellis fire chiefs on board, the design process? That way, if there's any modifications or any slight changes, that both the trucks can be ordered together and very similar to each other. Interest rates, we could go out, look out at lease purchase program, and the interest rates could be 3, 4, 5%, depending on going out on a competitive bid process to see which bank would give us the best interest rate. The estimated increase on price per truck per year is 5 to 7%, most likely 7%. We were told that if we were order engine 40 after the first of the year, there's already going to be a 7% markup just on the build out of the body, the bed. The chassis. The chassis is outside the scope of what the manufacturers are, because they buy that from Freightliner, Peterbilt, Kenworth, etc. They're holding their prices on the build of the boxes until the end of the year. After the end of the year, there will be an increase on the trucks as well. So if you paid for part of it now at a late and order 2, your interest rates would be lower for the next couple of years, and for the amount of funding that we put aside each year in capital, by the time the trucks would get here, we'd be very close to having them both paid off anyway on a lease purchase program. Whereas if we wait, we're going to pay at least probably 7% each year on the new truck. And I put numbers in here, they're just estimates of compounding interest every year. But a $330,000 truck now, by the time we order it, could be a $406,000 truck. So that's roughly $70,000, $80,000 just for that one. So can't tell what the future brings, but it was a good discussion we had and with staff, and thought it was a good option just to bring to the commission to consider.
Darren, on the new pumps on these trucks that you're speccing out, the pumps will be a little bit different than currently. Like you stated, it won't have the auxiliary power, but it'll be a little bit maybe more serviceable,
Yes.
more or less?
They're a lot simpler designed pumps. Like I said, the old ones here, the one that failed is the high pressure pump, which we don't even use at all. We always use the low pressure, which is the standard. The high pressure doesn't give us any extra option for the firefighting intents and purposes of what we do locally. So yeah, the pumps would all stay the same. We would lose that auxiliary motor, better emissions, one less motor per truck that we have to worry about fixing and maintaining every year.
Do we have any more trucks that built to this current standard as Unit 40?
Just engine 40 and 60. And Ellis and Victoria are the only two that have those high pressure pumps.
Okay.
Everything else has a normal pump.
Got it.
And that's what we're spec'ing these out, so everything's pretty standard then. Okay.
Correct. We also went from some of the other trucks had a Darley type pump, and without getting into too much detail, they have spinner gears in them. So when the gearbox didn't have sight glasses on some of the old ones, and is a typical dipstick, and like in the vehicle, you have to have so much oil in it. Well, in the spinner type casing, there's only so much oil in it, and then when the gears spin, it distributes the oil throughout the case. We had one on engine 50, and we switched from that to a different Darley type motor pump to a Watchers motor, which has a sight glass. It's easier serviceability, and it's easier. It was actually a better cost too. And that's what engine 50 has, is a PTO driven pump with a Watchers pump.
Mr. Burgess, anything?
Under that lease purchase, how many years do we do that? So we'd be paying for 2 years under the lease purchase without actually having the trucks, though.
Correct.
Right.
And so essentially, I'd have to pull it up to give the exact amount, but it's about, we increase it at $5,000 every year just because the price of everything goes up every year. I believe next year it's either $220,000 or $225,000 that we put into capital, the fire department capital specific for fire truck replacement. So if you look at the next 3 years, that would be roughly $750,000, which should be a little bit less than what these trucks are. So we could use some of our current capital and not have to lease as much, because we can maybe make that first payment of $250,000 and only borrow the other, say $500,000. I'm guessing on prices here. So our interest rates wouldn't be on so much principal, and then the next 2 years we would be able to make those payments by about the time the trucks get here. There wouldn't be a long lease like some of the others that used to be. We currently in the fire district, all of our leases were paid off as of last year. So the fire district is debt free, which is good to say as well.
To check though, if we give the go-ahead, if you start the process today, it would be 2026 before you see the unit.
Where are we at, 20? So a time frame, best case, is it's going to take us at least 2 or 3 more months before we would get the final pricing back from going through the Sourcewell and government purchasing. We would get that maybe, I would hope by the end of the year. That would be my goal, so that way we don't have any cost increase after the first of the year. Get that done, get them ordered, and they're saying about 2 or 24 months from there is when we get our trucks. So that would be 2025, December, is where they would expect it.
So
The fall, winter of 2025, before we'd get either of those 2 trucks.
Okay.
Like I say, when we were out at Fire Rescue International last month in Kansas City, spoke with some Pierce manufacturers, and they were between 36 to 48 months for a truck, so almost twice, or 50% or twice as long, depending on the type of truck being ordered.
So in other words, don't break down again.
Yes, as you all know, anything mechanical eventually will fail. It will. You won't find anything that's mechanical that has a lifetime warranty.
I would say proceed with it.
With 2?
Get us 2. My thought.
And this isn't actually asking the permission it's just proceeding with that route, and then once we would get the two designed, we would still come back before the commission. And for you to, then to approve either one or two.
Because if it's gonna take that many months, like I said, before it gets into the next year, everything's going up.
Yeah. I would suggest proceeding with 2. That's fine. Okay.
Starting upstairs again.
Yep. Okay. Darren, go ahead and proceed on with 2.
Okay, we'll start the work. Thank you.
Yep.
County Administrator report?
I have nothing this morning.
Okay, County Commission reports?
I have nothing this week.
Only thing I had was went to the Northwest Kansas County Commissioner Highway meeting. Me and Brandon went out there. There was a lot of good talking. There's and like I said, the what Scott said with the accidents and stuff, and he said a mouthful. The same thing was said out there, so it's a bad trend, but yeah. But, okay. And that's all I have. Okay, and then executive session.
So I'll move Board of County Commissioners to recess to executive session 15 minutes under the following exception to the Kansas Open Meetings Act pursuant to the attorney-client privilege exception. The subject to be discussed during the executive session is property tax exemption. Where's the clock? Open session will resume at 10. Can't do my math. 10:20. Those in attendance in addition to the Board of County Commissioners are Bill Jeter, Lisa Ree, Darren Myers.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved.
closed the first executive session, no action was taken. And then I'll move the Board of County Commissioners recess the executive session for 15 minutes under the following exception to the Kansas Open Meetings Act pursuant to the attorney-client privilege exception. The subject to be discussed during the executive session is contract negotiation. Open session will resume at 10:45 in the Commission chambers. Those in attendance, in addition to the Board of County Commissioners, are Bill Jeter, Brandon McKay, Darren Myers.
Second that.
Okay, a motion and a second, all in favor?
Twiddling stuff.
Twiddling. Got good at
I
it.
know, I hate that law.
Just don't know. Yeah.
Rules are rules. Heat to the fire.
Move to close our second executive session. No action was taken.
Okay, meeting adjourned at 10:45.
Okay. Cool.